have sons and daughters at home, we can also do something at home. This is my little boy called Toby. He's now 3 years old. I have two boys called Toby and Harry. And my wife and I passionately believe we need to do everything we possibly can to make sure that Toby and Harry go out into the wider world believing that anything is possible. But I run an ideas company called 7 Billion Ideas, so I always like to start with some ideas, typically to wake an audience up. So I've got three to share with you this morning. The first here is the beach desk. So I'm not sure many people are missing that sandy feeling out here in Dubai, but if you want to, you could consider having one of these. A second idea I have for you is the piano doorbell. So if you're trying to get the attention of somebody out in your house, you can play a little tune. And the third idea, if you're struggling to sleep at night, you might want to consider having a fish tank bed, ladies and gentlemen. My name is David Harkin. I'm very proudly the CEO of an organisation called 7 Billion Ideas. We are called 7 Billion Ideas because we exist to connect the 7 billion people, and soon to be 8 billion, people on the planet with their own ideas and their own imaginations. I passionately believe every single person I've ever met, whether it's a student or an adult, has the potential to change the world. But it's our job to encourage those people, to inspire those people, and give people the skills to really start on their ideas. 7 Billion Ideas works in two different spaces. Firstly, in entrepreneurship and education, and the second is around innovation in education. We have programs for students all the way from 4 up until 18, really encouraging them to think big and to dream big about the possibility of their ideas. But a hidden gem within 7 Billion Ideas is a product that we call Spark, where we're working with organisations and schools which are really trying to become world-class in absolutely everything that they do. And we designed what we call the model of relentless innovation. But I'm just going to start off by doing a little bit of storytelling, because I think it's really important when you hear from an entrepreneur, where did the idea start? It was 8 years ago I looked like this. Not aged at all, ladies and gentlemen, but we were just sitting around talking as a group of friends, coming up with ideas, fun, thoughtful and creative ideas about fashion, sport, technology, politics, the lot. It was a weekend in the United Kingdom, and I said to one of my co-founders, Jenny, in fact this is my co-founder and wife, I said, isn't it crazy that we are always coming up with ideas, but we are not doing anything about them? There are 7 billion people on the planet. I feel we have a duty to build something which is going to go inspire people like us who generate ideas but don't do anything about them. Jenny said to me, David, you've come up with some wacky, interesting stuff in the past, but this one sounds kind of interesting. The first thing that we did is we got our smartphone out, we purchased the domain 7billionideas.com, and my life personally changed forever. But as a new entrepreneur, that first moment of, we need some money to get going. We needed some seed capital to start our business. And there's a number of things that you can do, and this is what we teach children about, the different steps that you can take. When you're trying to raise some money, we needed 30,000 UK pounds at the start just to get the idea moving back in 2012 and 2013. You can go and speak to friends and family. You could go speak to Mr. or Mrs. Bank Manager and say, look, I've got an idea. It's going to change the world. Please can I have X amount of money? And I think back then they probably would have shown us where the door was. You could find an angel investor or indeed a VC, a venture capitalist, but we were far too small, small an idea back in 2012 and 2013. But we were very lucky that the concept of crowdfunding was beginning to pick up momentum in the UK and in different parts of the world. We went on a crowdfunding platform, and if you're unfamiliar with it, it's like being on an online Dragon's Den or a Shark Tank, where you put your idea out there and the crowd can decide if they're going to back it or not. We went on a platform called Crowdcube. We ended up raising £30,000 in 2 hours, and we were the fastest pitch in the world back at the time. Most pitches were taking about 150 days, and if anybody's familiar with crowdfunding now, sometimes businesses can raise millions of pounds in minutes. But as a new entrepreneur, the responsibility completely shifted. When it's someone else's money investing into your business, you know you've got to do as much as you possibly can to make sure you give them a return. And we didn't run off to the beach. The first thing that we did was to build our platform, which was a place for people to share ideas, fun, thoughtful and creative. The second thing that we did is we decided to use social media in Incredible World to try and build a brand on very little money. We posted some really interesting, interactive, engaging ideas just to build up some conversation, in particular on Twitter. So this was a broken down piano someone converted into a TV stand. This is an animal-friendly sofa. It's had over 2,000 retweets. And the beach library ideas. If you take a book on holiday, you might read your book. Most people put it back into their suitcase. They do nothing with that book. So why don't we have libraries on every single beach around the world? But the third thing, which is leading on to what I'm here to talk about this morning, is we were very passionate about not just becoming a tech-based business. We wanted to go into schools and encourage students all the way from 4 up until 18 to really think big and dream big about the possibility of their ideas and their careers. So we designed what we called a Think Big, Dream Big assembly, where we'd go into any school that would take us back in 2012, 2013, and said, we are going to challenge your students to see if they can come up with an idea that could change the world in 20 minutes. It was a huge amount of fun, and we had confidence in our idea. From those early assemblies, that grew into our education business, where we now deliver entrepreneurship courses, competitions, programs, and we've worked with over 100,000 students in all parts of the globe over the last few years. So we feel very privileged that we've seen some education in the Middle East, out in Asia, Europe, and in the UK. But apart from having a huge amount of fun at 7 Billion Ideas, why is our work so important? There's some statistics I want to share with you, and the first is that 15% of most working populations around the world are made up of entrepreneurs. Schools are producing more entrepreneurs than any other profession. So it's vital this becomes a strategic topic in education. Secondly, 77% of teenagers now say that they would love to start a business one day. That doesn't necessarily mean when they're 18 or 21, but it could be when they're 41, 61, it doesn't matter. But they are not confident that they've got the skills to get going. But lastly, 85% of the jobs predicted in 2030 have yet to be invented. But the World Economic Forum, which produced some fantastic material, so that one of the key skills a child will need in 10 years' time is creativity. If you look at the rankings back in 2015, creativity was number 10, it's now number 3, and it will be number 1 in a couple of years' time. So although I talk about entrepreneurship, I also mean intrapreneurship, where you act like an entrepreneur, but within a public sector role or within a business. But underpinning everything we do, and I think underpinning everything every single educator should do, is making sure that our children are as creative as they possibly can be by the time they leave school. So, I feel we all have a responsibility to unlock that entrepreneurial spirit which exists in every single student and inspire a generation. A few years ago, I had the privilege of doing my first of 2 TEDx talks that I've done. The first was about, can a 4-year-old change the world? And if anybody in the room has done a TEDx before, it's a fantastic experience, and I'd really encourage you to try and get on one of those stages. And I spent ages preparing for my talk. And typically when you watch a TEDx talk, there's one thing that people remember. And it was actually nothing that I said. It's what a little girl said in the video, which I'm about to show you. I went back into my old primary school. I grew up just out of southeast London, tiny little primary school in the countryside. My old head teacher has been there for 30 years, fantastic guy called David Jones. And I said, look, I'm preparing for this talk. Can I come in and interview the 4-year-olds and ask them this very simple question about whether or not they feel they can change the world? And this is what they had to say. Do you think you can change the world? Yeah, you can.
How do we do it?
Do you think you can change the world?
No.
Why not, Elliot? Do you think you can change the world? Yes.
No. It's because I don't have magic powers.
You don't have magic powers? Carl, do you think you can change the world?
Yeah.
Do you think you can change the world, Lois? Why not?
I can't.
Why can't you change the world?
I can't.
Do you think you can change the world?
Yes.
You do?
I can.
You can change the world?
I can.
You can't change the world.
Because you don't have anything. Yeah.
You don't have anything at all.
Because that doesn't make my sense.
Do you think you need to be strong to change the world?
Yeah. Because I need muscle. Because we don't have powers.
You don't have powers. What powers do you need to change the world?
Superpowers.
So, as you can imagine, that was an incredibly fun Thursday afternoon for me in the United Kingdom. But what did I actually learn from that exercise? It was a very small amount of students, but out of that class, 50% of the students said that they could change the world, 50% of the students said that they couldn't. Out of the 50% of students who said that they could, 80% of those were boys, 20% were girls. Little Elliot there said he needed superpowers. More importantly, Tanya there said she needed physical strength to change the world. She did not have muscles. She wasn't strong enough to change the world. And that's what people really remember from my TEDx. Isn't it crazy that a 4-year-old already believes that they cannot change the world because they are not strong enough? That child must be influenced by what she's seeing on TV, the books that she's reading, more importantly, the YouTube channel she might have some visibility on. And I think it's really easy to forget sometimes in education that we are constant role models. Sometimes we can't stop what these 4-year-olds and children are watching, but what we can do as adults is think about how we are behaving around them. The other problem that I see in education is that we are constantly protecting children. And it's not just education, it's in families' life as well. We are unconsciously protecting them. When a child comes up with a crazy idea, the first thing that we typically do is try to protect them. Tell them, okay, it might be possible, it might not be possible, but why don't you put your energy over here? It's a natural human instinct because we do not want that child to fail. And we've got to stop doing it. Because I believe words like can't, impossible, I think they should be banned from education. Because to me, anything is possible. And there is such a fine line between failure and success. When you look at some of the small ideas, the big ideas and the breakthrough ideas, they don't just happen like that and people become an overnight success. Sometimes it's 10 years of hard work, of failing, trial and error. And what I'm trying to get across this morning, if we're going to inspire a generation, what we need to do is actually stop protecting them. I know children have the ideas to change the world. We have to let these children to start running with them, to start working on them. And if they fail, they fail. They will pick themselves back up and they will work on the next project. I've been strongly influenced by this gentleman called Stephen Johnson, who did a great TEDx about, a TED Talk, forgive me, about where do good ideas come from. And he has a belief that every good idea just starts with a hunch, and then hunches have to add up and they crystallize into an idea. When a child or a teacher or a friend is coming to you and sharing that first hunch, you need to listen to them, okay? Please do not squash it, because that hunch could lead to a game-changing and a world-changing idea. I feel very privileged to have walked into education. My background was in tech. I used to work for IBM before starting 7 Billion Ideas, and I passionately believe every single day, and this is what I get across to my team, we have the opportunity to create a memorable moment in education which can shape a child's life. If everybody in this room thinks back to their own time at school, there are probably half a dozen things that you genuinely remember which changed your view on the world. Okay? It could be on the sports field. It could have been when a teacher said something to you when you were particularly low. It could be a fantastic grade. It could be an amazing talk or an amazing assembly. That's what we've got to do in our schools, to try and create more of these memorable moments to inspire our children. I believe the sole purpose of a school should be making sure that a child leaves when they are 18 still believing that anything is possible, and be fearless when it comes to sharing their ideas and acting on them in the future. But how do we do this? How do I give you a couple of little takeaways this morning? 3 things. I'm going to keep this nice and straightforward. Firstly, we need to truly start listening to our children. Okay? Listening is one of the hardest skills, but it's never really taught in education. When a child comes to you with an idea, just listen to them. Listen to them and ask some questions. Secondly, just get carried away with them. Okay, if they have a crazy idea, just get carried away with them, get excited with them for a little bit. I always tell students about the story of the contact lens. Once upon a time, someone would have said to someone, I've got a great idea. Let's put glasses on our eyes. And how do you think that first conversation went? Okay? Somebody probably told that individual that was crazy, that can't be done. So the next time a child comes to you with a crazy idea, just get carried away with them. And the last point here, just let them crack on with it. Okay? Let them explore where the idea could go. Okay? They will learn if it's not possible, but more often than not, it genuinely actually is possible. Guys, we all have a responsibility to inspire a generation, whether it's at school or at home. But I believe it starts by just listening to our children. The ideas are there to go change the world, but we need to give our students the opportunity to go explore them and to go and act on them. Thank you ever so much for your time. I hope that nobody has yet fallen asleep this morning. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about our work at 7 Billion Ideas, or a little bit more about myself, please feel free to get in contact. My details are on the screen. I am on Twitter at David J. Harkin, or on LinkedIn, and here's my email address. And I will spend the next part of the morning at the back of the room. Thank you ever so much for your time. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Thursday, and thank you.